This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
What's up, real MVPs, and welcome in to a special edition of the Primetime Podcast right here on Most Valuable Podcast. My name is Ricky Widmer, and I am joined with Sean Anderson.
No, hey, what's up? I thought you were going to go to Dave first.
No, I'll go to you first.
You might have said this before the podcast.
Around the horn.
Okay, well, but the last time we did Superfans, you went to Dave first.
Yeah,
he did.
But the normal way is this way. I didn't prep you up. Blame me.
I do.
Me. But I'm
blame
with
you.
Sean
I have
Anderson.
no thumbs, all fingers.
All fingers. Sean's pointing. And I'm with Dave Oster.
Hey, buddy.
And we are also with Pat Hill. I'm going to introduce him a little bit later after I set this whole thing up. Before we get into, we're talking James Wiseman and his suspension of the NCAA. That's pretty much the whole discussion.
He suspended the NCAA?
Well, the NCAA suspended him.
Ah.
And he's out now 11 more games. We thought it was going to be the whole season. It's not going to be. We're going to get into all of it. But before we do, make sure to check out patreon.com/Most Valuable Podcast. That is where you can help support us. And if you want to be like Pat and come on a podcast, you can at the $10 tier. But guys, to set everything up, it started out beginning of the year that it was a punishment that stemmed from Wiseman's mother accepting $11,500 from Penny Hardaway in the summer of 2017, and Wiseman playing 3 games this season while he was ineligible. So the first part of that was why we thought he'd be suspended the entire year, might have had to play overseas or take a year off before going into the draft. Now he's out 12 games. We already had one. I think game 2 was today, so 10 more games after this. And Pat, welcome in again. I want to throw it to you of just what is your whole thought? What are you thinking with this whole situation between the NCAA and James Wiseman and how it's all unfolding for us in college basketball?
So the biggest things that I feel, about this entire situation is I feel sad for Wiseman and his family because he can't play until January 12th against South Florida. I think that's the first game he's eligible after he sits out his suspension. But a lot of it is just angry that this has continued to be the NCAA's way of going about who they decide is eligible, who they decide isn't eligible. And it just makes me sad and angry at the same time that I shouldn't really be surprised that this is how the NCAA has chosen to handle this situation by just suspending him for $11,500. And while they initially ruled him eligible before the season, and then in the middle there's like, oh wait, actually you're suspended out. We changed our mind. You're going to be suspended now. And it just makes me sad because there's so many losers in this situation. Wiseman loses because he can't play for his team. Memphis loses because they don't have the number 1 recruit playing for them. Penny Hardaway loses. The University of Memphis loses. Fans of college basketball who want to watch Wiseman play lose. But the NCAA, with their money-making machine, have kind of like, well, this is how our rules are, but they don't seem to understand that their rules are just stupid. And it just makes me just angry and sad that they're still continuing to act this way.
I think the biggest thing that I want to ask Pat about is I just don't understand why Wiseman is the person that is getting at least the hammer come down on him. The 12 games, the $1,500 that he has to submit to whatever charity he wants. But why isn't Penny Hardaway being taken down to the hammer with? Why isn't his mother having to pay this fine? Why is it James Wiseman, who didn't know about this money, didn't accept this money, and wasn't the adult that offered him the money? Why is James Wiseman the person that is getting the hammer taken down to him?
I think that the Wiseman he's the target of the NCAA and not everyone else because even though Wiseman was the number 1 recruit, Wiseman is a student athlete and he has no power within the NCAA system. If they were to go after a university can fight back against him. If they were going to go and fight against the head coach, head coach has enough agency within the NCAA system to go and fight back against him. But a student athlete really has no agency in college athletics. They're told what to do, where to go, what to eat, when to sleep, what classes to take. Every part of their schedule is construed under these NCAA bylaws and guidelines. And they're easy for the NCAA to go after because they don't have power in the situation. And while Wiseman hired an attorney and tried to fight it, it ended up backfiring on him, unfortunately. So the NCAA, with their given power in their system where they have decided to give themselves power of attorney, power of judge, and these athletes, they've essentially been given no power. It's easy to just go after them because they're just easy targets at this point. And they send a message to all the other athletes who are about to play NCAA sports that if you don't want to end up like Wiseman, you have to follow our rules. And unfortunately, that's what a lot of athletes have to do.
Well, and the thing that I am thinking about is the rule that we're talking about that really stemmed from this. Is it a bad rule for the NCAA to have? Is it a bad rule to say, hey, this coach, this donor, however you want to, because Penny Hardaway at the time, another thing they said to fight it was when he gave the 11.5, the 11,500, I'm going to say it that way, to Wiseman's mother, he wasn't employed by Memphis yet. This was in 2017. He wasn't hired until March 18th or March 2018 to be their coach. It's not a bad rule that's in place of like a coach like Roy Williams, Coach K, can't say, oh, I'm going to help you out here, right? Because it's kind of seen as a conflict of interest, like other schools, to kind of keep recruiting an even playing field. But the thing that, and Pat said, it comes down on Wiseman not only because he can't fight back, but I almost sit there, and it's easy for me to say this not being in the situation, but I'm going to say it anyways. This is why no matter what, you kind of have to take onus of your own life, where it's like how Sean, I think it was Sean that mentioned, where it's like he didn't even know that Penny gave his mom the money. There's a part of me, a small part that goes, well, you maybe should have found out about that, but at the same time, how could you? Because it's like when you're dealing with college basketball, the smallest thing like this can ruin your eligibility. And it's a rule that's not like surprise, where it's like, oh, surprise, we got this shocking rule here. It's like, no, we've seen how many athletes get in trouble for this same thing, accepting money. Well, that's more with agents, not with an actual coach, but it's still in the same ballpark. Like, there's a part of me that's like, there has to be some onus on James Wiseman and more so his mother, if anything, because I know the mom could play the, well, I didn't know about the rule. Exactly. You should know about the rule. If like, no, maybe she shouldn't, but James for sure should know about it.
I think this falls into a situation where there's just a gray area around how the rule is picked and chosen to be enforced. What is the exact context? What is the timeline? What is the eligibility rules? Because I feel like, as you know, if you were in a situation where you were struggling, you needed to, move out of this area, and someone offered you this help, I'm not going to go check the NCAA bylaws to make sure my son will still remain eligible.
No, but
for that,
James that's
what I'm saying. As her mom, as James Wiseman's mother, no, that she's not supposed to know the NCAA handbook by fucking heart. Like, that's not one of those situations. She's like, hey, I'm being offered help. I need help. I'm going to take this help and make sure that the quality of life for my family is as best as it can possibly be. Like, that's her job as a mother. I have no problem with that. I think my problem lies in the way the NCAA picks and chooses its positions, where to enforce, when to enforce, and how stringently to apply punishment to different players. I feel like had Wiseman not been the number one recruit in this class, had he not been a notable player who had this connection to Penny Hardaway, who I feel like now I wonder, is the NCAA coming after him because Penny's had some interesting clashes publicly with the NCAA already in his early tenure. Like, is this just them trying to push, flex their muscle on a smaller program at the moment who is, on their way back up for sure to being a star program? But it's just like, it feels like they're picking their fight specifically right now. And I wonder if this is just a case of, them trying to prove a message out there, or is this something where, other situations, it seems like you're turning a blind eye to other people taking money from other sources.
And I'm going to kick it to Pat in 2 seconds. I just wanted to retort with this, where you're right. Because James Wiseman is such a highly recruited player, that's naturally the big fish. They're going to come after the big fish. They're not going to worry about the small fish. You could say that about different things, not even just the NCAA, where the big fish are the ones that you go after. But the thing you said about, like, the mom accepting the money, the one thing that I agree that she's not the one that should know about the rules. It's Wiseman that should. But at the same time, if, let's say, I had a son who was going to do this, and I had, hey, I'm going to offer you money, the first thing I would do is go to my son, hey, is this going to ruin your chances? Do you know? And if the son doesn't know, hey, could you look into it? Because I would really like to use this money. Like, that's with me of, like, you got to cover your bases if you want to be successful. Because the rule's there. It's not like the rule sprung up. Pat, what do you think about...
Well, had Penny not been, a coach for Memphis, would this be a problem at all?
They're saying because he's giving money to the school, he's also a donor of the school. So he plays into that. So it's, yet again, the non-equal playing field of recruiting, of trying to buy a recruit, basically. Pat, what are you thinking about the stuff that now we're bringing up about about his mother and with Penny Hardaway and kind of knowing about the rule beforehand?
I mean, if I've given maybe $10 total to the University of Kansas and the University of Illinois where I've gotten to school, so if they want to call me a booster,
yep.
I mean they're free to do that. But that rule is so. I get why that rule is in place for the NCAA in terms of what they want and how they want to police things. And yes, should have Hardaway have known? Yeah, he probably should have. Like, I'm not going to take any onus off of Penny Hardaway for that situation. He should have known about the rule. But the way that the NCAA has kind of ticketed this one is like, it's the best analogy I've heard about this description was like they've targeted like one of the bullies on a block, and they've said like, you're the problem with our sport. You're the problem with college basketball. And that's really just been how the NCAA has always operated. They will make an example out of a big school's program, whether it's USC's football program, North Carolina's basketball program, or individual athletes or individual coaches who even dare say like, yeah, these rules are kind of bullshit and we shouldn't really be following them. We should be like more opening this up to what they should be doing, as they said, like, we say that college athletes should be allowed to make money off their image. And the NCAA will never want to will always turn a blind eye to those other transgressions because they don't want to admit themselves that their system is deeply flawed and deeply corrupted. And they will go to like, that is basically their hill to die on it. They will go out saying that our system is not the problem. It's just these people, like it's Wiseman, it's his mom, it's Hardaway. They're the problem. I'm like, no. Like, they're not the problem here. They're trying to make their best of whatever situation there is, but your rules aren't really making it easier for them. So as much as I know that, like, did they break rules? Technically, yes, they did, but the rules are stupid. And from my perspective, I'm much more leaning towards the NCAA and saying, like, so what are you going to do about these rules? Because they make sense, but they don't make sense. Like, what are you going to do to fix them, to be honest?
I just think the wrong people are being, even if you're breaking the rules, the wrong people are being hurt by them.
You think it should be Penny Hardaway?
It should be Penny. It should be the fucking adult in this situation. Yeah. That Penny Hardaway knew what he was doing. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, Do we think that we know Penny Hardaway does not like the NCAA rules. We know that Penny Hardaway pretty much knew when he gave him this money that he was going to be the job. He's been rumored for this job forever. Yeah. It knew that Penny Hardaway one day was going to be the Memphis head coach, and he knew that James Wiseman was thinking about going to Memphis. I don't think at the time he had committed. Mm-hmm. If not, it was probably in that area. I think in some way he knew that he was going to be coaching James Wiseman. I don't think it's that much of a mental Olympic to make that he was going to do that. I think he just wanted to lighten himself up either to the Wiseman family or to James himself and make sure that he was going to have a relationship with Wiseman and start it off early.
Wasn't he Wiseman's high school coach?
Possibly.
I thought he was Wiseman's AAU coach.
It was AAU
coach. Yeah. Okay, so I think it was just there was then to even go back on that. I mean, that
he didn't
just
have
makes
to soften him up because he already had that relationship.
Yeah, so I mean, there was already a relationship there. I think that Penny Hardaway probably knew that he was going to get the job too. At the point, I don't think they fired their coach, the dude that used to be at where was he before this? I'm blanking on the Memphis coach now, Yeah, I think it's more on Penny Hardaway because I think Penny knew what could have happened to James Wiseman, and now Penny Hardaway can go up and say, it's unfair that the NCAA is doing this, but it's also you put James Wiseman in an unfair situation, and yes, you helped him out in the end, because you helped his family with money, which is still a nice thing to do. It's tough to get upset at him for helping out people who needed money. But in the end, like it all falls on the wrong person, and that's James Wiseman. And I actually kind of think it works out, weirdly enough, for his pro career better, because you're not playing as many games, but you still get to play in this season, so people will still get tape on you, and that means you're just putting yourself in a less situation to get injured. And I think if you are able to then ball out in from January to March, this could just increase your ability to get drafted higher. So
I mean, injuries though can happen anywhere. Anytime.
Absolutely, but I mean, you're just going to be playing less, which is always good for somebody. And I think that. I think that weirdly it did end up helping James Wiseman, but I don't think the NCAA had that in mind. They wanted to hurt him because they broke the rules. Yeah. They wanted to hurt, I guess, pretty much Penny Hardaway because his player wasn't going to be there for 12 games total. So I think just it's a bullshit rule 100%, but I think it's also just the wrong person's getting injured here. Penny Hardaway should probably be the coach that's suspended for 10 games.
I completely agree. I think that Hardaway is the guy to target, and I don't mind it if they had done that, but I don't know. I look at this situation and I just wonder. You mentioned, this is what the NCAA does.
Tubby Smith was their coach, and I think people knew that Tubby Smith was going to be out at some point.
Former Cincinnati coach too.
Yeah. Minnesota coach. I know him as.
No, that's what I'm thinking. Minnesota.
But
and Kentucky. Everyone forgets about his one national championship at Kentucky.
Oh,
really?
Not?
Mm-hmm. Oh, I wasn't alive.
Sean's like,
that's fair.
I don't remember.
But that's why he's been given so many opportunities because of that national championship he won there. And I feel like people are like, oh, he was at Memphis and Minnesota. Like, are we forgetting where he won a title?
No false information.
I guess so. I guess Calipari just erased everyone's memories of whoever was the head coach for him.
He won in '98. I was one.
And before I say what I was going to say, the Cincinnati thing, I was thinking Minnesota. So I don't want to spread false information. Gotcha. He wasn't at Cincy, but that's another thing I think of, like, because Sean mentioned the recruiting for Wiseman, and the ESPN article says that it was an investigation that brought up the documents of this payment. Mm-hmm. I would not be surprised if behind the scenes there was something of, like, because it was really Memphis and Kentucky were the two. And if you look at it, when I see things like John Calipari being a secondary on a recruited buy, odds are Kentucky made a really big push to try to get that player in the door. I wouldn't be surprised if Kentucky might have behind the scenes kind of nudged things to where it's like, hey, what are you going to do? Like, this isn't right. He would have came to us if he didn't get that money. We could have had him. Like, how is this fair? How is this fair kind of a thing? And Kentucky, one of the bigger prestige programs in NCAA, bringing in that money for the entire NCAA.
No, I get that. And that does hold some weight to it. I think that if you take away one of the best players, you're going to get some notice put on you. And again, it's anytime any top recruit doesn't go to a school for a reason. It was like, I don't even want to mention it, but like the Michael Porter Jr. thing, had his dad not been an assistant coach, like there's no chance he's going. There's no chance. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I think it just...
But that's different. His dad didn't give him money. He just had fortunately, he was born from that man.
If you have someone... If you don't have a connection, but you go somewhere that's not a blue blood, it stands out. Mm-hmm. It's almost like I wonder what happened there kind of a moment. So I wonder, because Memphis... Well, they had the connection. They had the relationship already. Mm-hmm. So that was enough for me to go, Penny Hardaway coached him. He wants to go keep with Penny Hardaway. That would make sense to me. The money, just a cherry on top. I just wonder, like, is this such a problem that they need to make an example out of him for this right now? I feel like there's bigger problems in the NCAA when it comes to recruiting, when it comes to how agents are talking to kids on the AAU circuit, when they're being approached, they're being gifted things. Like, I feel like there are much more pressing needs that the NCAA should focus on rooting out and resolving, or even updating the rule set to make sure that these players aren't getting poached or whatever. Like there's just better ways that the NCAA can go about fixing their rules and fixing the way that they treat student athletes, that I feel like this is almost like it's great, you wasted a ton of resources on this and it's going to turn out to be a nothing anyway. And like you said, it's just lose-lose for everybody. So like, why do you think that they're just actively, like, why aren't they going after other rule changes?
I mean, it's tough for them to go after it just because you can't play pay players yet, and I think that's probably going to be the biggest rule change that is going to be made at some point with the legislation that's been passed or is trying to be passed in California. We're going to see a ton of movement on that. I think Illinois is even trying to make movement with that. So I think that's going to be the biggest rule change that we do see, and then after that, I think they're going to have to try to play through those landmines that is, paying these players and playing college athletes in general. So I don't think they're looking to change the rules right now because they're still trying to demonstrate as much control as possible before they lose that and before they start have to pay players, because that's going to come at some point. And whether that's 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, that's what they're looking at right now. So they're not going to try to fight to change any legislation right now because they want to still demand that legislation and they want to look as strong as possible when it comes to those actual negotiations of, all right, what are we going to pay these players? How much is going to be given out? And then once they have to figure that out and that is set in place in the NCAA, then they're going to go after the recruiting stuff, because then, it's actually going to come down to money. And if every player is making the same place, if you make $1,000, whatever,
no matter what school you're at,
$1,000 a month for whatever school, then it's going to be like, all right, well, now we're going to have to change the recruiting stuff because, Charles Bassey went to Western Kentucky. That was just a weird one. I know that was mainly because he wanted to go pro. But D Rose
went to LSU.
Yeah, Ben Simmons going to LSU. That looks shady now too. That was a good one. I was thinking D Rose going to Memphis, but Calipari had some pull. But D Rose going to Memphis was a little shady too.
That was a wink, wink, nudge, nudge. You get a guy to take a test for me, kind of a deal. So
yeah. So there was things. These guys going to smaller schools that's something that I think is going to be in play, and that's going to be the next thing that they have to do. But I think their biggest focus is paying players.
Yeah, and that to me is because the thing I didn't think about it until Jay Billis said it, was because my personal experience in college was worked at a radio station. Sean, you had this too. Worked at a radio station, got paid for that job. I made $1,000 a semester was my paycheck. So it was beautiful because Dave and I would do recording, do some stuff. It would be every Friday we'd go out to eat. I'd have my $100, and it would be basically the $100 I made was for the 2 meals that we did the Fridays of that week. And then I would get $100 more, and it would be rinse and repeat, where it's like football players, basketball players, volleyball players, they're not getting that. Now, the big problem is, and Pat, I want to pull you into this. I know this goes a little bit away from Wiseman, but I still want to ask you, with the paying players thing, how viable, I don't want to say viable because, or how possible is it, but how tricky do you think it is? Because it's not just basketball and football players that are going to be getting this money.
Real quick, another one was Dennis Smith Jr. That was another one that was a little iffy, and he was a part of the FBI thing. No, there was. Didn't
his mom have a connection to NC State too?
They could be saying that, but I know he was investigated by the FBI too. But he was something a little bit weird.
But Pat, what do you think about the whole paying players thing? Because it's not just going to be football and basketball players that get paid. What are we going to cut volleyball, softball, baseball out from this also? What do you think?
So I agree with paying players. I think it's the right thing, and not just basketball and football players to bring in most of the revenue for athletic departments, but also for the non-revenue athletes, for them to get just a chance to utilize their name and image and likeness to bring in whatever resources they might. It could be money for a camp appearance or being paid to put on a clinic for kids. Anything related to those, I'm all in favor of. And I've always known that players should be paid, but for years I've always been debating of when I'm going through the research that we have on how to pay college athletics, there's a lot of splits by sport economists about how that should actually look like. And one of the approaches was what these states are doing right now, which is let's just get rid of the amateurism rules and just allow them to make money off their image and appearances and kind of do away with those rules. But I agree with those because these athletes just deserve to have that like every other college student. And the fact that they don't always has bugged me. But I do think that the biggest thing that always pisses me off, and also I agree with Jay Billis when he always brings this up, is people will say oh, this is too complicated. How can we pay football players and basketball players the same as the rowing team or the golf team or the tennis team? Will we have to take money from these sports? What about Title IX? And it would always bring it down to you guys are world-class institutions. You guys are able to conduct international business transactions and complicated mechanisms every day and every year that you guys are in existence, you can figure this out.
Yeah.
And when they say it's too complicated, that's just like, are you fucking kidding me? I'm a PhD student, and if you think this shit is too complicated, one more time, I'm going to like lose it on you.
I love it.
Conducting a research design, that is difficult, but this is not difficult.
No, I mean, I think opening up the amateur status would be a huge first step. And then if you go on a sliding scale based off of, I don't know if you want to go conference revenue per sport and break it down from that, maybe that would give, you're not going to pay. I don't think you pay them equally. I think it's based off the revenue income from the sport.
Go ahead, Sean.
I just have to bring this up because this is incredible on the Memphis front. Memphis just beat Ole Miss today, 87-86, and the line of that game was 4 points. Memphis hit a dunk with 0.9 seconds left to put them up 4. Ole Miss inbounded the ball, threw up a 3 at half court, and made it. And that pushed the game to a 1-point game.
That's a bad bet.
That's a bad beat. And so that's gonna be on Scott Van Pelt right now on Monday. But that was absolutely incredible. So just since we were talking about Memphis, I want to bring that up.
I love those, just the bad beats that you get. But I mean, I kind of disagree with that, Dave. I like what Pat said more than what you will, because I don't want it to be where it's like football, basketball. They are getting paid the most. Everyone else, like, there's a way. Just off of likeness, where it's not going to be.
I said you open up that first, and then you add on the ability to do a sliding scale based on conference, based on sport percentages.
Yeah, but I mean, yet again, it's not super complicated that everyone's making it, but it's complicated in the sense of what's the minimum line? Like, what's the minimum line that you're going to pay a player? Like, what is it going to be for the rowing team? It's like, well, yeah, technically I get paid, but it's like, whatever. It's basically like what I was getting before, but I get like a little bit of compensation.
Because there was nothing in your game before.
Yeah, but I mean,
to have any money is a start.
That's easier said than done. It's easier said than done depending on how much the amount is for, let's say, the rowing team, the golf team, the non-team that's not basketball or football.
I don't think you can pay everyone equally. Mm-hmm. I think equal is wrong. I think fair is the correct term, and that's the thing. It is a situation where you have these revenue generating sports, like football, like basketball, like baseball, and a lot of the southern schools, where they just draw in attention, they draw in dollars, they draw in fundraising at this level. And yeah, I mean, money's got to go somewhere. So I would say, again, just break it down. And it's a sliding scale. And I do agree. There's a bottom level you have to decide on, what that number is. If it's, $15 an hour based off of whatever. It's just, your minimum wage for a college athlete would be one of those lower revenue generating sports. But I don't think they should be paid equally.
What do you think, Pat? Should it be more towards the equal, or are you on the side of football, basketball get paid more than everyone else?
It's hard for me because I think all these student athletes are well deserving of equal treatment, just because they do have such demanding schedules, and they're not allowed the same rights that other students on campuses are. So kind of separate them from basketball and football, even though they do make most of the revenue and they are deserving, and they are kind of like the forefront ones of we make the NCAA billions of dollars, and yet we get no slice of the revenue. But it's hard for me to just, on the basis of they make more than these other athletes, that it's easy. I can't really side with that of they automatically deserve more. I think under the current circumstances, if amateurism is gotten rid of and they are able to make more money off their images and likeness, I think they are in a better position to benefit than the small non-revenue sports. But that doesn't diminish any of the opportunities that these small non-revenue sports will, because I do think they will eventually get their opportunities to earn money and opportunities from their likeness and from their image and from their status as a student athlete, which they all should be able to do, regardless if they play for a big revenue sport or a small revenue sport.
I agree with you that I would like it all to be equal, but then again, it is tough to be like, oh yeah, you're making the same exact as the chess team. if chess team players or the men's volleyball
they probably
team.
get more than the chess team probably gets more than them at this point.
Yeah, I just think though, like, the players for Alabama, like, it's also tough with like women's sports as well, because like, if you're paying the men's basketball team, like, what they if we're basing it off of the income that they actually bring in, obviously the men's basketball team and men's football team are going to bring more in than the women's basketball team and the women's volleyball team.
Unless
like that's
you're
just
UConn.
Unless you're but even then, I still think the men's basketball team rakes in more than UConn's women's basketball team. I could be wrong on that.
Yeah.
Alabama's tricky because Alabama does have one of the most prestigious gymnastics programs in the nation. And to tell them like, oh yeah, like you guys are great, but football, like that's our bread and butter. And to me, that's just like, okay, that completely diminishes like the accomplishments of those student athletes.
No, absolutely.
It's like Illinois with our women's volleyball team.
Absolutely, but I think it's still like which team is still getting like that actual national like media money, and then like Alabama. I mean, we just can look at the football locker room. Like clearly, that program has more money than the gymnastics team. I haven't seen the Alabama gymnastic locker room, but I doubt it's as good as the Alabama's football locker room. And that's the thing that just like I would like to see these people make the same amount of money, absolutely. But I do think it's going to be difficult for them to figure that part out, especially for teams with such drastic, differences when it comes to the revenue that those teams in, like Clemson football and men's basketball. Right there's going to be like the football team deserves more money based on what they have done, and then also just the media money that they bring into the school. But then again, it is unfair because even let's just flip it. UConn's women's basketball team and their football team. Their women's basketball team deserves all the money in the world just because of their actual accomplishments, but should it be based on the accomplishments or what the actual school brings in and that program brings in? So I think it should probably be equal, but I think then you're going to have people still complain about it, which is fine. I don't really care about the complaint, but I think in the end it's going to end up equal. But I think we're going to then see a debate on when it comes to when schools have such a disparity in what the teams are actually accomplishing. I think that's where we're going to see probably the biggest issue. But I would probably just be like, yeah, make it equal just because you're all college athletes at the same school. So I think that's where it should be equal, and it should really be based on accomplishments.
My favorite slam on locker rooms for these football programs was when LSU announced like their new locker room with like these chairs in
the library,
and all these fancy amenities. They're like probably the fanciest locker room I've probably seen. And then when their football team tweeted out like this is what champions deserve, and then someone tweeted of like a flooded library, like this is our library right now. And they're just like, yes.
Fuck
like,
those books.
That made me laugh so hard. And it was one of the most disgusting libraries I've ever seen.
Yeah, I think
all the damage of flood.
I think Katie Nolan had that in her ESPN show, and there was like a video too of like there's just a gaping hole in like one of their walls. Like there's just a huge like patch, and it's like we can't fix it because like. But yeah, it's ridiculous that like you. But I think those are just athletic funds, and they can't put them towards the library. Where that's just a ridiculous.
Money, probably.
Yeah, exactly.
I know that for sure.
Oh no.
It's funny to just see that.
Yeah. Oh, I'm not saying you're wrong or anything like that, but it is ridiculous. Just like it is, you're donating to LSU, so shouldn't LSU be able to use that money how LSU wants? But again, it is the athletics department. But it's ridiculous how much money goes into some of these major sports at these major programs, and that's why I think you're going to see inflated egos from those players, because they're going to be like, well, all these people are coming to see us at 100,000 seat stadium at Michigan or whatever.
Yeah.
Where you more fans are there to see you than actual NFL teams. There's going to be inflated egos.
There's $4 tickets for the Redskins game this week.
Yeah, I think you could buy 2,000 seats, and it would still be cheaper than a Super Bowl ticket. So you could fill.
Crazy. Like the craziest college fans are going to be more crazy than the craziest like professional league fans, and I don't know why that is, but in all the research that we've done, we've shown that, and that scares the hell out of me that someone is more prone to craziness in college sports than professional sports.
It's that relatability, they're not. They went to that school.
Some
they
of
were
them
there,
did, but like some of them are like me, where it's just like I have an attachment to Illinois. Never went there. Never stepped foot in an Illinois classroom. Wasn't even down on campus.
That's what that guy that poisoned the tumors trees in Auburn that never went to Alabama was just an Alabama fan. He's just like, there was just too much Bama in me.
Yeah.
He poisoned the trees like an idiot.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
The one kind of last thing that I was going to bring up more so when Sean was talking about, because the big thing is how much of the money gets divvied up. The example I wanted to use of why I feel like the pyramid should almost be flipped, where it's like the non-football basketball players should get the money more so than the football basketball players, is because if you want to open up the likeness that we talk about, I'm going to throw 2 names out there. I want you, each person, all I'm going to do is throw a name out there. We'll go Pat, Dave, and Sean. Tell me if you know who this person is. Ready? Trevor Lawrence. Pat?
Yes.
Yeah, I heard of him, yeah. Yeah, of course I know who Trevor Lawrence is.
Everyone knows who Trevor Lawrence is. How about Kamar Rocker? Do you guys know who Kamar Rocker is? Anybody?
I know who John Rocker is.
Nobody? Kumar Rocker is a right-handed pitcher for Vanderbilt. He's going to be the top prospect this year in the 2021 MLB draft. And my example with this is someone like Trevor Lawrence can easily go out there and make money off his likeness. Somebody in baseball, somebody in softball, like the lesser you go, they don't have that same opportunity. And I know there's people in football and basketball, like the bench players, where it's like, oh, I'm not Tua Tagovailoa, so he's obviously going to have an easier job making more money than I would. But at the same time, it's like Alabama football kind of gives you a boost over everything else, where I don't feel like open up for their likeness is the key to have all the sports
and not
have
just
the
likeness,
same
but
amount.
Also like Pat was saying, you can do camps, you can do anything around basically. So you're not limited. Like you can't even be like a student worker like as an athlete. So like there's such ridiculous standards around it. I get what you're saying. I still don't agree. But that's okay. I don't have to agree with this.
This Kumar kid's a beast.
Yeah, I know, right?
This guy's a tank. My God, no wonder he's going to be a top draft pick.
Anyway, my final thought is like on the NCAA and Wiseman, I don't think this hurts his draft stock at all. I think he's still locked in to be a top 5 pick regardless of him playing or not playing this year. I just think he's just so damn good. Like he's 7 feet tall. He's quick. He's got good hands.
And we all know Dave's secretly becoming a Memphis Tiger fan.
Huge Memphis fan.
He's being the face for Memphis.
He's going to be a lotto pick still. This isn't going to affect him. We've seen so many guys, be hit with something like this and it not affect their career because people know that the NCAA. Yeah, people know that the NCAA is bullshit. Like, I mean, that's what it comes down to. Like, the NCAA is just trying to flex muscle. Nobody cares. Nobody's impressed, and it just pisses everybody off. But the only thing that sucks is like we still are going to end up watching all of Wiseman's games, and that money's still going to go to the NCAA. So it just sucks that there is not competition for me to watch college basketball anywhere else, because I would really like to not support the NCAA with all the bullshit moves they've made year in and year out to hurt these student athletes. It's bullshit that they cannot be student athletes. It sucks that James Wiseman, whose family apparently needed the money to have a house. Or to relocate to Memphis. Yep. It sucks that they cannot get that if someone is going to be generous with their money. And then it sucks that James Wiseman has to then get it taken out from him. Like, what I don't think James Wiseman has is $11,500 right now to give to a charity. And it's just stupid that that's one of the things that he has to do. But overall, James Wiseman's going to be fine from this. The NCAA still sucks, and it's disappointing to see.
Pat, any final thoughts?
Yeah, the NCAA sucks. I completely agree with everything that's been said. Wiseman is going to be fine because he is so talented. He was the number 1 recruit, and because he has a bright future in the NBA. But it makes me think about, what if it happened to someone who is not like a guy like Wiseman, who's maybe a fringe player who just wants to play in college basketball, and he's not allowed to because something that he did when his family needed money. So unfortunately, as much as like we gripe about Wiseman and we think like, he's not going to be affected, he'll be just fine. But not every player obviously is James Wiseman or a Zion Williamson or a Trae Young. And there's going to be those guys that the system kind of leaves behind, or athletes that the system like screws over, and they're not going to get much attention because they're not as talented as James Wiseman is. But that's and the last final thought I have, and the very sad part about all this is college sports is the only thing that's making me enjoy this season, because every single professional team I love just makes me sad and angry and depressed. Like, I can't think about the Bears or the Bulls or the Cubs without just getting fuck. Like, what the hell are you doing?
Well, and that's the thing is, like,
the fact that Illinois football is carrying me through. Just, I don't know if that's an indictment on Illinois football or an indictment on how shitty the Chicago sports landscape is right now.
Well, Illinois football is bowl eligible. Kansas football looks decent. Obviously, those teams are going to be decent basketball programs as well.
Did Kansas win today? They were
no, it's 41-31. They blew it.
Iowa State, but they had a pretty good game. But it was a lot better than last week.
But yeah, no, I mean, Pat hit it right on the head. I mean, imagine if this was a football walk-on kid that is already paying his way through school, is going to have $100,000 in debt to go to University of Michigan, and then is going to have to, then give $11,500 to charity. It's going to a good place. Like, oh no, he's going to give money to charity. But it's the fact that he has to give his money. Like, he should be able to make that choice that I'm going to give my money to charity, and maybe not the massive amounts of student debt. That it's going to happen. It's lucky that Wiseman's going to be a lottery pick. He's going to get, a lot of money in his NBA career, and he's going to be, and in the end, well off, hopefully. Yeah. But it just, if this was to anybody else, it could be absolutely, just a massive damage to their life.
And that's the other thing, and I hate that I have to even say this because it's me playing devil's advocate or looking from the other side. I feel like if it did happen to that walk-on, we wouldn't know about it. We wouldn't. The only reason we know about this right now is because it's James Wiseman.
Yeah.
Because he's top prospect or one of the top two, depending on where you look, in the NBA draft. But let us know what you guys think down below in that comment section. This one, I'm assuming, is going to be a decisive one of like a lot of conversation, maybe some shouting back and forth. Who knows? But let's keep it respectful. Let us know what you guys think down below in that comment section. If you want to be like Pat, want to call it on a podcast, patreon.com/MostVal Podcast. That is how you do it. Link is down below in the description. Want to thank Pat for coming on. We're going to have you on Superfans eventually, Pat, to talk about those Cubs and whether or not they're going to trade Wilson Contreras, because I know you've been talking about that in the Discord. But let us know what you guys think. And as always, have a good day, everybody.